Welcome to History Hub, where we uncover the forgotten heroes of India, the stories that shaped our nation's identity, courage and pride. Today, we bring you the incredible and dramatic story of a man who was not just a king, not just a warrior, but a visionary who challenged the might of the British Empire. Tipu Sultan, the legendary Tiger of Mysore. In the late 18th century, when most Indian rulers were struggling to protect their kingdoms and the British East India Company was tightening its grip on the subcontinent, one man dared to roar back. Tipu Sultan of Mysore stood as a symbol of resistance, bravery, and innovation. His life was a saga of courage, sacrifice, and ambition. A story that continues to inspire historians and patriots alike. Let's travel back to 1751 in the small town of Devanahalli near modern-day Bengaluru. Here, a child was born into the powerful and ambitious household of Sultan Hyder Ali, the commander of the Mysore army. This child, named Tipu Sultan, would one day become one of India's most formidable kings and warriors. From a young age, Tipu showed an exceptional interest in learning and warfare. He was educated in multiple languages: Persian, Arabic, Urdu, and Kannada, and trained in military strategy, horse riding, and weapon handling. His teachers noted his sharp intellect and curiosity for science and engineering, traits rare for a royal child in those times. Hyder Ali, recognizing his son's potential, personally oversaw his military education. At the age of just 15, Tipu accompanied his father in battles against the Marathas and later against the British. His early exposure to warfare forged in him a sense of courage and leadership. The young prince quickly gained a reputation for being fearless and strategic. He understood that warfare wasn't just about power. It was about innovation, discipline, and planning. By the 1760s, the Mysore kingdom had become a significant power in southern India under Hyder Ali's rule. He was a self-made leader who rose from a soldier to a king, defying the old feudal systems. Tipu inherited not only his father's throne, but also his fierce determination to keep Mysore independent from foreign rule. When Hyder Ali passed away in 1782 during the Second Anglo-Mysore War, Tipu Sultan ascended the throne at the age of 31. He was now the son of Mysore, one of the most powerful rulers in India. A man known for his energy, intelligence, and revolutionary ideas. The British East India Company underestimated him at first, but soon realized they were facing a leader unlike any they had encountered before. Tipu Sultan's reign marked a new era in Indian governance and warfare. He was not just a military genius, he was a modernizer far ahead of his time. He introduced new administrative systems, revenue reforms, and even pioneered the use of rocketry in battle, a remarkable technological leap for the 18th century. His army's use of iron-cased rockets in warfare stunned the British. These rockets, later studied and adopted by the British military, were among the earliest examples of modern missile technology. But to understand Tipu Sultan's true impact, we must first look at the turbulent world he lived in. The late 1700s were a period of constant conflict in India. The British East India Company was expanding its influence, defeating kingdoms one by one. The Marathas, the Nizam of Hyderabad, and smaller southern powers were often at odds with one another. Amid this chaos, Mysore stood out, organized, technologically advanced, and united under a strong ruler. Tipu Sultan's greatest challenge was the British. He saw the East India Company not as traders, but as conquerors. He famously called them the most dangerous of all enemies. His vision was clear: India must remain free from foreign control. To achieve that, he needed alliances, innovation, and courage. The First Anglo-Mysore War, 1767-1769, had already established the might of Mysore under Hyder Ali. But it was during the Second Anglo-Mysore War, 1780-1784, that Tipu Sultan's leadership came to the forefront. When his father fell ill and later died, Tipu took command of the Mysorean forces. His strategies were swift and precise. He launched surprise attacks, captured British posts, and outmaneuvered his enemies in the hilly terrains of southern India. The British, led by General Cornwallis, faced heavy losses. The war eventually ended with the Treaty of Mangalore in 1784, one of the very few treaties in which the British had to negotiate on equal terms with an Indian ruler. It was a moment of immense pride for Mysore and a humiliation for the East India Company. Further, for Tipu Sultan, it was proof that India could stand against colonial power. After this victory, Tipu began strengthening his kingdom further. He modernized the administration, reorganized the army, and improved agriculture and trade. He introduced new coins, new measures, and encouraged industries like silk, sugar, and weapons manufacturing. His capital, Sarangapatna, became a model of efficient governance with roads, irrigation projects, and well-planned markets. Tipu also established diplomatic relations with foreign powers who could counterbalance the British, including France, Turkey, and Afghanistan. He corresponded with Napoleon Bonaparte, hoping to form a strategic alliance against the British. These moves made the British deeply anxious. In their eyes, Tipu Sultan was not just a regional king. He was a serious geopolitical threat. But Tipu's ambitions went beyond politics and warfare. He dreamed of an India that could innovate and produce its own technology. He established factories to manufacture cannons, muskets, and rockets. He reformed the coinage system, promoted trade through ports like Mangalore, and built a strong economic base. Tipu's administration also supported education and science. He encouraged the study of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. His curiosity led him to experiment with new forms of rocketry, combining metal and gunpowder to create weapons that were both effective and terrifying. The British themselves later admitted that Tipu's rockets inspired the development of their own Congreve rockets used in the Napoleonic Wars. Despite being a devout Muslim, Tipu Sultan ruled with a sense of justice that extended to all his subjects, regardless of religion. He donated to Hindu temples, respected scholars of all faiths, and maintained a multicultural court. His letters and decrees often mention the importance of protecting all communities under his rule. Mysore thrived under this sense of discipline and harmony, even in times of war. But the British, that threatened by his growing power, started preparing for revenge. They painted him as a tyrant to justify their aggression. They spread propaganda describing him as cruel and fanatical, though historical records show he was far more progressive and strategic than his enemies admitted. This propaganda would later help the British justify their campaigns against Mysore. By the late 1780s, tensions between Mysore and the East India Company reached their peak. The British allied with the Marathas and the Nizam of Hyderabad, both rivals of Mysore, forming a powerful coalition to crush Tipu Sultan once and for all. This set the stage for the Third Anglo-Mysore War, 1790-1792. The battles were fierce. Tipu's soldiers fought with unmatched courage. His use of terrain, speed, and technology continued to frustrate the British forces. However, the combined might of three great powers began to take its toll. After 2 years of brutal fighting, Tipu was forced to sign the Treaty of Srirangapatna in 1792. Under the terms, he had to surrender half of his territory and pay a massive war indemnity. It was a devastating moment for Mysore. Yet, even after such loss, Tipu Sultan did not surrender his spirit. He immediately began rebuilding his army and training new soldiers and restoring his economy. He sent 2 of his sons as hostages to the British as part of the treaty, but vowed to bring them back and reclaim Mysore's full glory. His determination shocked even his enemies. Lord Cornwallis himself admitted that Tipu Sultan was a prince of the most extraordinary abilities. At this point in our story, Tipu's legacy was already growing beyond Mysore. Across India, people began to see him as a symbol of resistance, a ruler who refused to bow down even in defeat. His name became synonymous with courage, innovation, and defiance against colonialism. The year was 1792. The proud Sultan of Mysore, Tipu Sultan, had just signed the Treaty of Srirangapatna. Half his kingdom was gone, and 2 of his sons were taken hostage by the British. Many rulers might have surrendered to despair, but Tipu did not. He looked at the treaty not as a defeat, but as a temporary setback. His spirit burned brighter than ever. He told his ministers, "My sons are in their hands, but my sword is still in mine." From that moment, Tipu Sultan began preparing for what he knew would be the greatest battle of his life. A war not just for Mysore, but for the freedom and dignity of India. After the treaty, Tipu worked tirelessly to rebuild. He reorganized the Mysorean army, reinforced the fortifications of Srirangapatna. After modernized his weapons once again, he invited French engineers to train his soldiers and help manufacture artillery. His dream was to free India from British domination, and he believed that technology, unity, and courage could make that dream real. Meanwhile, the British East India Company never trusted Tipu's silence. To them, he was still a dangerous adversary, a symbol of Indian resistance who could inspire others to rebel. The Governor General in Calcutta, Lord Wellesley, began plotting a final war to remove Tipu Sultan from the map of India forever. In 1798, when Tipu formed diplomatic ties with Napoleon Bonaparte of France, the British decided they could wait no longer. Napoleon had just conquered Egypt and was looking toward India. Wellesley feared a possible Franco-Mysore alliance. It was the perfect excuse to attack. So, the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War began in 1799. A campaign that would decide the fate of southern India. The British gathered a vast army, joined by their Indian allies, the Marathas and the Nizam of Hyderabad. Together, their forces numbered nearly 60,000 troops, while Tipu commanded about 30,000. But numbers never frightened him. He had faced greater odds before. Tipu's confidence came from his deep belief that Mysore soil would never tolerate slavery. He often told his men to live like a lion for a day is far better than to live a slave for 100 years. That sentence captured the essence of his life. Dignity over submission. The British advanced toward Mysore from multiple directions. Tipu responded with lightning strikes, destroying supply lines and ambushing enemy convoys. His rockets once again terrified the British troops. That even British officers recorded that when Tipu's rockets flew through the air, they made a strange screeching sound that caused confusion and fear. But the alliance against him was too powerful. The British had modern siege cannons, better logistics, and internal support from traders who wanted Tipu's downfall. By April 1799, the British army surrounded Srirangapatna, Tipu's capital, a city fortified with strong stone walls, moats, and heavy gates. Inside, the Sultan stood ready with his soldiers, refusing all offers of surrender. For weeks, the British bombarded the fort day and night. The sky was filled with fire, smoke, and thunder. Civilians hid underground, and food supplies began to run low. Still, Tipu Sultan inspired his men, riding along the ramparts, shouting, "Fight for your land, fight for your faith, fight for Mysore." On May 4th, 1799, the British launched their final assault. Thousands of soldiers stormed the walls. Tipu's forces fought fiercely, pushing them back multiple times. But in the chaos that achieved, one of the gates was betrayed, opened from within by a double agent. British troops poured into the fort. Tipu refused to retreat. Dressed in his royal armor, sword in hand, he fought on the front lines beside his men. Even as bullets rained, He charged forward, cutting down British soldiers one after another. Witnesses later said he fought like a tiger cornered but unbroken. At last, exhausted and surrounded, Tipu Sultan was struck down near the eastern gate. That is how we achieve arms. When the British found his body, he was lying with his sword still in his right hand, his head high, and his wounds facing forward. He died as he lived, a warrior king, never surrendering, never kneeling. The British commander, General Baird, stood over his body and said quietly, "You have fought bravely, Tipu, and died like a soldier. With his death, the kingdom of Mysore fell. The British placed the Wadiyar dynasty back on the throne as their puppet rulers. The once independent kingdom became a subordinate ally of the East India Company. But though Tipu Sultan's body fell that day, his legacy refused to die. Born in the months that followed, the British looted the treasures of Sarangapatna, golden thrones, jeweled swords, tiger, striped banners, and manuscripts of his inventions. Many of these artifacts still rest in museums in London and Scotland today, silent witnesses to the valor of Mysore's tiger. Among the most famous items recovered were Tipu's tiger-shaped automaton, known as Tipu's tiger, after mechanical sculpture depicting a tiger attacking a European soldier. It symbolized his lifelong a struggle against foreign invaders. For the people of Mysore, his death was a tragedy beyond words. Stories of his bravery spread across southern India. How their king had fought until his last breath to protect their land. Folk songs, poems, and legends celebrated his courage. Even those who afterward once doubted him, not called him a martyr for India's freedom. Now, let's look deeper at what made Tipu Sultan a visionary ruler beyond the battlefield. Tipu introduced land and reforms that improved productivity and ensured fair taxation. He invested in irrigation projects and promoted agriculture as the backbone of his kingdom. He also encouraged local industries, silk weaving, sugar, iron, and weapon making Mysore one of the few self-sufficient economies in India during the 18th century. He issued coins in gold, silver, and copper engraved with Persian and Kannada inscriptions, symbolizing unity and cultural pride. His revenue system was so advanced that even the British later studied and adapted parts of it. Tipu also maintained one of the earliest postal systems in India, ensuring communication between distant provinces of his kingdom. His administrative structure included efficient record keeping and accountability, principles far ahead of their time. In foreign policy, Tipu was remarkably modern. He sent ambassadors to France, Turkey, Persia, and Afghanistan, seeking alliances and trade agreements. He understood geopolitics long before the term was common. He believed that for India to remain strong, it needed to be connected to the global powers resisting Britain. Historians often call him India's first freedom fighter. While his primary goal was to protect Mysore, his struggle represented something much larger: the dream of an independent and self-reliant India. He resisted British control not for personal gain, but for sovereignty and dignity. Although, of course, Tipu Sultan was not without controversy. Some records describe his harsh treatment of enemies and his aggressive religious policies in certain regions. Like all rulers of his era, his reign reflected both power and politics. But reducing his entire legacy to these accounts misses the broader truth. Tipu Sultan was a complex, revolutionary leader who stood against the strongest empire of his time. Even the British, despite their propaganda, respected his intellect and bravery. British historian Edward Thompson wrote, Tipu was ambitious, but his ambition was the ambition of a man who could see farther than the rest of his generation. More than 2 centuries later, Tipu Sultan's name continues to spark debate. Was he a tyrant or a patriot, a conqueror or a freedom fighter? But one thing is undeniable. He fought for the sovereignty of his land when few others dared. His introduction of rocketry alone placed India on the scientific map of the 18th century. His innovations in governance inspired later rulers. And his fearless stand against British imperialism planted early seeds of the freedom struggle that would continue into the 19th and 20th centuries. Today, when we look at Tipu Sultan's legacy, we see the image of a ruler who combined courage with intellect, faith with progress, and tradition with innovation. He wasn't merely defending territory, he was defending an idea that India should govern itself, build its own technology, and stand as equal among nations. imagine the scene on that fateful evening of May 4th, 1799. The thunder of cannons has faded. The fort of Srirangapatna lies in ruins. British soldiers marched through its gates, and the flag of Mysore, bearing the roaring tiger emblem, falls from its mast. But beneath that fallen banner lies the lifeless body of Tipu Sultan, a king who refused to run after a leader who chose death over submission. In that moment, history changed. The British gained Mysore. Generations later, leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru spoke of Tipu Sultan as one of the early icons of resistance against colonialism. Nehru wrote, Tipu Sultan lived and died a hero. In him, we see the dawn of India's modern political consciousness. Across schools, cities, and institutions in India, his name endures in roads, universities, and monuments that remind us of his unyielding bravery. His capital, Srirangapatna, still holds the remnants of his palace, the beautiful Derya Dolat Bagh, its walls painted with scenes of battle, triumph, and valor. Standing there today, one can almost feel the echoes of drums, the clash of swords, and the roar of the Tiger of Mysore. Lord Tipu Sultan's life teaches a timeless lesson that freedom always demands courage, and courage always demands sacrifice. He proved that leadership is not measured by how long you rule, but by how fiercely you defend what is right. Even in defeat, his roar continues to echo through Indian history. A reminder that no empire can silence the spirit of resistance. So when we speak of Tipu Sultan today, let's remember him not just as a figure in history books, but as a visionary ruler, a scientific mind, and a fearless patriot who stood tall against the greatest odds. He dreamed of an India that could make its own weapons, weave its own silk, trade with the world, and stand free from foreign rule. That dream lived on through centuries of struggle until it finally became the reality of independent India. And that is why the story of Tipu Sultan matters, not just for historians, but for every Indian who believes in courage, innovation, and self-reliance. Thank you for watching History Hub, where we bring the forgotten heroes and untold stories of India's glorious past to life. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe to History Hub for more deep dives into India's rich history.